Welcome to another episode of the Bowga Hunting Podcast. Today we have Garrett on the phone. Garrett, otherwise known as the DIY Sportsman. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's good. And you're in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, Twin Cities.
Okay. You guys are the ones that brag about the lakes all the time.
Well, that or Wisconsin. When I lived in Wisconsin, they bragged about the lakes too and claimed that they had more than Minnesota.
Yeah, I feel like Michigan we're from Michigan, so we make similar claims.
Yeah.
And so even though we're all Great Lakes,
it's a fair argument. I mean, everywhere you go, I think in Michigan, you guys are probably have this more dense, but
yeah,
I think it's every like 5 miles is a lake.
I think 3. Or a body of water. So
go.
I think
that's what it was.
I don't know if a creek counts or like what the cutoff. I think people are just making up things to try to one up the fact that Minnesota probably still has the most lakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, Garrett, wanted to have you on because you're an interesting guy. You want to tell everybody like what you do and why maybe people know you as the DIY Sportsman.
Sure. So with my YouTube channel, a lot of the videos that I've made over the years not only are just, hunting related videos, but I've done a lot of builds of things, whether that's making a longbow or doing modifications to gear like tree stands, saddle systems, etc. I had a couple videos where I even got into like building a feather burner for traditional arrows,
nice.
Harvesting sinew, did that for a little bit. So that's always kind of been in my nature. I have kind of I guess, somewhat of a technical background in my job, but also I've always just been really sort of handy and like to do things with my hands. So it's been a good fit.
I'm going to take just a stab here, shot in the dark. You were an engineer by trade. Is that right?
Yes.
Bingo.
Right.
That's a point.
So where'd you go to school?
U of M. Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Not the.
We would have shut this down.
He's this Michigan State guy. You didn't even go to Michigan State. Why do you like it,
dude? I don't live in Detroit, and I still like the Lions.
No, I mean you live in the state.
You don't live.
I live near
Illinois, and you like the Bears.
But what's your tie to MSU? I always wanted to know. It's just the fact that you just decided one day.
Honestly, I've never really gotten into college sports at all.
Yeah. Until
I married into the Burgess clan, local Burgess clan. And they're huge. Well,
I still think you should have taken that.
No way, dude. Most of them are MSU fans. So go green.
You guys, no, I don't know. I don't watch college sports. Does the University of Minnesota ever play? Like, are you rivals at all? Is it Big Ten?
Big Ten.
Yeah, they're in the Big Ten. Yes. So you're an engineer by trade, and like, what got you into like tinkering, or is this something you just always did since you were a little kid, or like how'd that work?
Yeah, it's pretty much something that I've always done. I was the kid that when we'd go fishing, I would take a little piece of like pine wood or something and try and, carve out a lure and figure out a way to screw in, little eye screws and put hooks on them and stuff and try and make my own lures and things like that. Did some fly tying when I was a kid. It's always been something that I've just done.
Yeah.
A part of how I tick, I guess.
Hey, sorry to interrupt right now, but we got to thank a few of these sponsors that help make this show and this type of content possible. So here it is.
First up, HuntWise, our favorite phone app. You can get it on Android. You can get it on iPhone. It's the ultimate sportsman's app. It's got mapping, movement predictions, and social media content. So look them up on your App Store, Google Play, or whatever kind of phone you have.
Vortex Optics is some of the best optics in the world. All right, we use them all the time, not only for hunting, but I actually use it sometimes out on the golf range.
And in the podcast range.
And on the podcast. It's Wisconsin-based, so it's an American company. And also, they make a pretty slick clothing line. So if you want to save yourself 20% off on clothes like this, head over to their website and use the code BOGA20 for 20% off.
And next up is Vector Custom Arrows. It's an arrow company that we really love. Again, they're a Wisconsin company. You basically go to their website, you enter in your bow specs, and they create a custom, perfectly tuned arrow that fits your needs. It's a micro diameter. It's heavy hitting. We shoot them into tons of stuff. We don't break them very much, and they're delivered right to your door. Check them out at vectorcustomarrows.com.
All right. If you didn't know already, we are Michigan guys. So we like partnering with Michigan companies. So we are proud to announce that we are partnering with Prime Archery. And believe it or not, James, you're going to be shooting a compound here.
I'm going to dabble.
He's going to dabble in the wheelie bow. again. So we're both actually going to be shooting the Nexus bows that are brand new for 2021.
You're 4. I'm Nexus 4. I'm going to be shooting the Nexus 2.
Yep. So if you guys haven't checked these bows out, go take a look on their website. They're awesome.
Nano grip. Just check it out. The grip stays warm in your hand. Huge deal. I get cold fingers, and I'm a big fan. Looking forward to it.
If you've been paying attention to the podcast and this show, you know that we are big advocates of saddle hunting, and the best saddles that we like to use are the Trophy Line tree saddles. They are top-notch. They fit really well. They're very adjustable. We've actually used quite a bit of them, and we found that Trophy Line is our favorite, mainly because of that. And if you guys think you want to get into the saddle game this year, or if you're looking to upgrade your saddle, head over to their website, and you can save yourself 10% by using the big long code Bowga Hunting TL10.
One word.
One word, 10%. Go get yourself some discounts.
We work with another amazing Michigan company, Bivouac Bow Co., the makers of some of the finest traditional archery equipment that we've had the chance to shoot. I've been loving the mobility and the stability of their backland bow, shooting it for about a year and a half now. Huge fan. It's compact. It shoots like a longer recurve. If you want to get into traditional hunting, if you want to maybe upgrade the traditional setup you have, go to Bivouac Bow Co. Give them a call. Talk to Georgia. Talk to Jim, and they'll hook you up with something pretty special.
We've all kind of been there. A few hard days in the woods. You're going to get a little sore. Things might not be feeling normal. That's where you can actually use something that's a pretty trendy product right now, and that's CBD. It's not cannabis, all right? So you're not going to be feeling all crazy.
It's hard to light.
This is hemp extraction, I believe it is.
It is.
It's
and this is locally sourced, so it's pure and local.
It's pretty much an oil with a dropper. You drop it on your knee and rub it in just like any other ointment.
Or any other body part that might be hurting.
Yikes. But we use it. It helps. You save yourself 10%. Go to their website. 20%.
Yeah, 20%.
20%.
Bowga.
Sorry. Bowga 20.
And now back to business.
You got to look up here.
And now back to business.
Did you ever find like one piece of wood did better than the other? I mean, expand on that a little bit. I want to know. Like,
Oh, for making lures?
yeah, making lures.
Well, I mean, I think balsa is always kind of one of the well-known ones. I'm pretty sure that's what Rapala had been made out of.
I'm pretty sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that once. I did it when I was a kid. I did it actually once recently when we were camped out in Colorado elk hunting, and my brother Jake and I found this hanging lake, and like we had some fishing tags, and we're like we weren't even thinking, we didn't bring fishing anything. We got up there and we looked out on this beautiful stream just full of trout. It was like this beautiful setting. And so I'm like, man, we got to try to catch some of these fish. And so we spent the longest time coming up with line and hooks and stuff. And like, we had one on, and then all of our stuff fell apart. Like our hook fell apart, and we were like, all right, I'm done. So it's hard to do. I wouldn't, if I had to depend on my fishing abilities from scratch, I would not make it far. Yeah, Garrett, like the way that I probably know you best is some of the work that you've done, like saddle hunting. I feel like that's one of the things I've seen your video on, the best hunting pack for saddle hunting, and some of the ways that you like modify your gear. Is that like, are you always doing that, or do you have kind of it dialed in, or how do you go about doing that?
I'd say by this point I have it pretty well dialed in. I'm always tinkering a little bit, and most of the tinkering that I'm doing now is more on how can I make things even more efficient than they really are. Can I eliminate an 8-step eliminate a step from like an 8-step process, make it a 7-step process? Can I make something with less movement? Can I, make something lighter or smaller even than what's commercially available if it's, still safe? So it's always kind of function first. And at a time, it was also kind of weight and compactness related. But it seems like everything's so lightweight now and it's so compact, moving that direction, that now it's kind of circled back to maintaining a lot of what is kind of good about the saddle systems, but also making it as functional and efficient as possible.
Yeah. What's your if you don't mind sharing, what's your setup like? What's like the thing that you've clearly been spending a lot of time on? Where'd you land?
Yeah, so currently I use the Tethered Phantom. Although the personal one that I have is kind of a hodgepodge of I got it before they even had like the comfort channels. It was a prototype at the time, and I've sort of added some things to it. I made it so that it has basically the same bridge, but I've made it a detachable bridge on the one side. So that if I want to run it underneath like Sitka incinerator bibs or underneath an IWAM or something like that, then I can basically pass that bridge through. But otherwise, it's functionally very equivalent.
Okay. You ever use one of those IWAMs? You know what he's talking about?
Nope.
It's like a heater bodysuit.
Oh,
but I think the IWAM, it's different. I forgot how it's different. Does it not have legs?
It's got a fully enclosed bottom. So
yeah,
I got it this spring. Whereas like the heater bodysuit, it's enclosed on the upper body.
Mm-hmm.
You have individual legs. The IWAM's kind of the opposite. You have the enclosed legs.
Yeah, that's it.
You have individual arms. You don't have to unzip and pull yourself out of it. You can just grab your bow and shoot.
Those things, Steve had one.
Yeah,
one of our hunting buddies, he'd always walk out with this big sleeping bag on his back, and that was like for a lot of the year. He'd just peek out of there.
He'd be out there all day.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, some nasty weather. Half the time, I think he was just sleeping.
I know, you zip it up. It's like a sleeping bag. So I don't know. It just looked funny though, because it's literally like, the heater bodysuit, for those of you who don't know, is like basically a sleeping bag, like that's made for hunting in with legs. And so you look like ridiculous with just like your little zip tied, top, and then these little weird booty legs poking out. So we've talked about it on the show. I've done my own DIY on this. I just took a full sleeping bag, tricked it out with like straps on the inside, had pockets all in there, and it worked fine. It fell apart. I called it the Y2 camo because it was sleeping bags that my mother and father-in-law got for some reason when Y2K was coming. Apparently they were concerned about, sleeping arrangements after, everything came to a screeching halt. So they got these sleeping bags, had them in their attic. One time I'm over there, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to throw these away. And,
bingo.
I'm like, bingo, you give me some camo felt and, sewing machine to make my sister-in-law sew it. I designed it. Really, I can't say I really built any of it, but worked pretty well.
There's a company now that it's not in the hunting space, but they make basically wearable sleeping bags that have individual arms, individual legs, and it's just like one main zipper. I bought one because they made one in a real tree pattern to see if it would work.
Yeah.
And I would have had to do so many modifications to it that I ended up just sending it back.
What was is it like the Michelin Man type setup?
You kind of look a little bit like the Michelin Man wearing it, but it's not, I guess, set up with the baffles, so that it has kind of that look. It was just synthetic insulation, so it looked smooth when it was on, but it was just ultra baggy on the arms and the hands, and
string slap and stuff.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been very great for shooting a bow with.
Now, do you do a lot? I'm gonna get back to your ultimate setup, but do you do a lot of traditional archery, or are you mostly compound, or what do you shoot?
I'd say for practicing and just shooting at the range, I'm probably 50-50. Sometimes I'll be in a streak where I'm shooting more traditional. Sometimes it's the other way around. For hunting, I'm definitely more compound than I am traditional. Last year, I don't think I hunted with a traditional bow at all, but the year prior, I did probably 80% hunting with traditional. But then I ended up shooting all my deer with a compound, and like the 20% of sets that I was using that.
Yeah, right.
So it's always been a mix, and it always probably will be somewhat of a mix.
Yeah, I like the mix. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm headed. I've been purely traditional for 3 years, and it's been great. And I will always be hunting with my traditional bow, but it will be nice sometimes to be able to poke out a little farther.
Yeah, your range is definitely not as long as what you've had before.
No, it'd be nice. I don't know. Everybody's got their own thing. Like some people want to sneak in real close, and some people like to take really far shots. And like I'm somewhere in the middle. But to be able to like go out and feel it comfortable to at least 40 yards is like it's a pretty big deal. Like your chances go way up.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I look at if I'm going out of state and it's a 4-day trip and I've never been to the place before. Right. I already got the odds pretty stacked against me. Traditional just adds that one extra little thing. Plus, you add filming into it. Mm-hmm. The bigger bucks that I've shot over the last couple of years, just about every one of them has been in a scenario where I probably wouldn't have taken the shot with a traditional just because I wasn't happy with the angle, or they had me pegged and they would have responded, more to the slower arrow, or whatever the case may have been. But Yeah, it's always kind of a tough decision when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I'm always very, very conservative with shot selection with the recurve. Like I don't like with a compound. I'm pretty trigger happy, and I feel like I'm pretty confident. But with the recurve, even like this year, I passed some. I had a shot on that turkey that I could have we had one come in, and it would have been kind of fitting it through a real tight window if I had one at all. But instead, I'm like, just wait, be patient, let them take some more steps. But I feel like if I had my compound bow, I'd just be like, sending it right through. So I feel like my mindset shifts back and forth between those two. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I that was off track. I want to know more about your this setup. So you've kind of gone through your saddle. What else? What about the sticks platform? Like, what have you done to it? What about hanging your stuff? Walk us through what it looks like.
Yeah, so for sticks, I have a modified set of the tethered one sticks.
Yep.
Prior to that, I made my own sticks. I had bought a few different brands. I've tried the leverage sticks. I had tried the Lone Wolf Custom Gear double step sticks, and had probably 2 or 3 iterations of ones that I had made. Some that were designed to basically have a really flat stacking profile, some that were just really lightweight, some that were, basically optimized to make them as long as I can make them and still climb with.
Are you Frankensteining these together? Is that when you say you're making them, or how are you making them?
Oftentimes for the steps, I would machine them, and for the tubing, I would just kind of buy stock tubing off of Online Metals or McMaster or something like that, just because it's pretty expensive to get custom tubing, but off the shelf tubing is pretty cheap, especially with aluminum, much more so than titanium or carbon fiber. So that's usually what I do. And if I were going to have something that was sort of pulled off of another stick, it would usually be the standoff. Just because it was easy to get and it's saving the machining time.
Yeah.
So
he's just out machining. What are you doing with your life? You're not machining anything.
I'm not machining. I don't machine.
No, I've never once machined.
That's what 3D printers are for nowadays.
I think I want a 3D printed. I'm going to need some stuff 3D printed pretty soon. I feel like that's a little ways out though. They don't print. Can you print anything that strong? I don't know how that works.
I've got one somewhere around here.
That you 3D printed?
No, 3D printer.
Oh, nice.
But the issue with the ones that you can buy like pretty inexpensively, is you're going to struggle to make something that's going to be strong enough to support body weight. But
especially Jared.
Yeah, they do have machines that probably would be capable, but they're not hobbyist level machines. Like you can get machines that print in metal, with selective laser sintering. There's other machines that print and basically inlay continuous fiberglass or carbon fiber reinforcements. Some of that technology would probably work, but it's the stuff you're going to buy for like a $300-400 machine on Amazon, not going to cut it probably.
Yeah, interesting.
There goes my plan.
I know. There's your big buck. So you've tinkered between all these. What you say? You said the one sticks.
Yeah.
Are you okay? I don't know. I've never used those.
They're obviously light, and there's a lot of sticks now that are light. These ones are right around. The way that I have them set up, they're just over a pound. They're probably like 1 pound 2 ounces a piece. But the changes that I've made to them since being stock is for the standoffs. I've wrapped them. So I've taken a combination of stealth strips and just like that camo form or vet wrap, and basically silence pretty much everything you can silence on the standoff itself. And then for the tubing, I wrap that with stealth strips. I played around with some melamine foam, which is like
inside. Yeah,
the same kind of foam that you would have like for acoustic panels. And it didn't seem to be as impactful as coating the outside. With the stealth strips or the camo form. So if guys want to do that on those, it's probably not going to hurt. But I didn't feel it was like ultra necessary either.
I want some. I've not tried those stealth. Have you heard? You know what he's talking about? The stealth strips.
It's like a moleskin.
It's like what is it? Lone Wolf Custom Gear makes that. Is that?
Yeah, they make a similar one that's more kind of rubbery in texture.
Yeah.
Whereas the stealth strip is kind of like it feels like a micro fleece kind of.
Okay. Nice. And probably a little bit warmer when you're setting them out in the cold,
If you ever listen to this show or follow along with us,
you're about to be mean right now.
It's always cold
Well, I'm always
90% of the time.
I'm always looking for ways to maximize comfort in order to maximize how lethal I am in the woods. I think we can all agree that the more comfortable you are, the more focused you are, and the more focused you are,
That's fair.
the more deadly you are. It's science. Yeah, I've been looking into it. I want to try some. We use the trophy line sticks. I think we're gonna try. One of us will try. Probably they have some double sticks coming out, and the other will do the every other. Did you say you do double? Is that what you like?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I used to use the Lone Wolf, the original Lone Wolf.
Yeah.
The full length, and even I had a set of the minis, and I used to be one of those guys that would make fun of the double step stick people because it was not necessary. You didn't need it. It was extra weight.
Yeah.
And once I started using the double step version of sticks, then I saw that the functionality for me was worth the trade-off of a little bit of extra weight and a little bit of extra size packed up.
Yeah, because when you're standing there, it's like, I don't know why, but when you get 1 foot up, 1 foot down, your feet hurt. Like, it's cold, and like you're very aware of you're putting a lot of weight on that.
Cold.
Wow.
Cold.
What an ass.
Always cold.
I'm just saying, like, you're doing a lot of stuff.
If I'm climbing up, I'm warm.
Two steps are just a luxury, but they're a nice luxury to have, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's easier to stand on and do stuff with 2 legs that are the same height. Otherwise, you put all your weight on 1 leg, and it's just easier to do, I feel, with a 2-step. Are you doing rope mods for attaching to the tree?
The 1 sticks come with rope mods. They come with am steel that just wraps into its own cleat.
Okay.
So there's no buckle or anything. But even prior to those, I was using am steel rope mods for pretty much everything.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I got my inspiration. I watched one of your YouTube videos on the rope mod and how to construct them and kind of what millimeter of
what do you 8
cord to get? Yeah, 8 mil that I use.
Yeah, it's nice because you can just snug it nice and tight.
Yeah.
There's no fiddle factor. There's no landing in between loops. You just get it nice, fast, snug. You can lock it around and it's secure.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And if you guys
I've used that 2 years now. It is nice. That was from him. That was right. Because I got it from Jared.
That's where it was. So I owe my credit to Garrett.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've been seeing this dude on, I think, Etsy, if you believe it or not. And he does am steel, like those like loops, like you just do different, like they're preset loops along a chain. Mark's got some, Mark from our team, and they're real light. You can wrap them up real tight. So he's going to try them out. I thought that was pretty interesting. Have you ever tried anything like that?
Yeah, they're called daisy chains. Where you just have like little loops.
That's the word I couldn't think of.
Yeah.
Yes.
They work really well on straight trees. And if you have a tree where they just kind of land in between loops, then sometimes if the tree is small, if you can make a second wrap around, you might be more likely to have it land on the right loop.
Right.
But the challenge I have with them is that if you get on a tree that's just like kind of wonky, then if you're not getting that rope really tight, it's not going to seat as well as it could.
Yeah.
On a straight tree, you're working with gravity, everything sinks down nice and straight. But if you got like a weird angled tree, it seemed like it wouldn't get as tight as I would like it all the time.
Sure.
Whereas with a method like either a cam buckle, like the just original heavy ones, or like a rope mod, I could really get as much stretch as possible out of that system. And it seemed to be more stable for the wide gamut of trees you might come across.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I have a pair of sticks that I just have the original clips on. So I'm
like the straps.
Yeah, the regular, like you said, the heavy straps, which are actually nice. They're not that bad to use. But my debate was to try that daisy chain stuff or just to do rope mods like we've been doing. So it's good to know, like a little bit of an angular tree, something a little bit wonky. It's not going to be as ideal. Great. Yeah. Well, yeah. So you mentioned a couple other things, Jared. Like what other video did you say you watched that he did? I feel like the hanging one. Didn't you get your string hanger thing? Was that from him?
Mm-mm.
What was that?
Nope, can't give him the credit for that.
Where'd you get that from?
Oh, G2 Outdoors.
So explain it, because I just clearly, like what I just said makes no sense to anybody listening.
Yeah, so basically it's a string of 550 cord that I tied a loop on the end. And then along that string, I have some smaller Prusik. Is that how you say it? Prusik knots?
Prusik
knots that act as my gear hanger loops, so they can slide all around on there. But you basically just loop it in itself around the tree and take one of those Prusik, whatever it is, the sliding knots that I use. And you kind of just slide it up to that loop, and it just locks it in place right there. And then you can hang stuff all the way.
Do you have to hang your backpack on the one end to hold it tight?
No. I just do because
it's just right there.
It's just right there. But yeah, it works like a charm, and it like folds up into the size of your hand. And
you just throw it right.
Practically no weight at all, and it's cheap.
Yeah.
So
how do you do yours, Garrett? How do you hang stuff in a tree?
Historically, I had always used a similar system where it's just like I would even use an AM steel like 1/8 inch piece, and then I would use those little Night Eyes cam jams, I think they're called.
Okay.
And it just allows you to basically, you have a loop in one end, you clip the cam jam in, and then you can just cinch it tight. And then I would have actually 3D printed little hooks that would slide around that AM steel, and then I can just position those wherever I wanted to position them. And they work pretty well. The only thing that would happen sometimes is on those hooks, because they could rotate, there's just like a hole that would slide around the AM steel. If your quiver or whatever, your limb would catch on the top of the hook, sometimes the hook would lift up when you would try and lift your bow off.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a huge fan of that. I ended up trying, I took some 3/4 inch webbing and sewed up a strap that's similar to the one Tethered makes.
Yeah.
What they call their his strap. And then took some Kydex and just made hooks for pretty much all my accessories. I even made hooks for, I don't have anything sitting right here, but I made hooks for like my rangefinder, so that I just had something hanging off there. Same thing with the binoculars, because I don't.
Yeah.
Once I have a lot of cold weather clothing on, I don't like to wear a bino harness over the top of everything. Just compress a little bit of that insulation, and you're constantly taking it off and putting it back on when you're adding and removing layers. So I had my bow and basically all my accessories with those hooks, and then for my 360 camera, I have a ground spike.
Yeah.
And that's actually this rig right here. So I can just stick that into the ground. But what I found is with that his strap, I can take this ground spike and just basically suck it into one of those loops.
Yeah.
And then the bottom just kind of finds a groove in the bark. And then I have that 360 camera basically just sitting up in the tree.
That's sweet. That is good. That's good to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that works pretty slick. And that thing doesn't move at all when you pull any of those accessories out.
Really? Because it's jammed into the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on the harness when it's cold. Like, cause either you put it on like way on the outside and it kind of pushes everything in, which doesn't really help with, the way the clothes are really set up to keep you warm. And then like trying to get everything out. So I put it underneath my coat before, but then it's like you have to unzip or leave your coat unzipped, which kind of defeats you being in Wisconsin. It gets pretty cold and like, Minnesota. That's basically the same. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You hunt both.
The wrong side.
Either way, it's cold, and it's like every time you open it up, you lose like so much heat, so much energy just gone. So I've done the same thing. Like when it gets real cold, I just bring the one strap, or I throw it in my backpack, hang it right in a tree, and like that's as far as I go. You forget your binoculars half the time, so
it's so thick around here, especially the places I hunt. It's just, I don't know. It's just one more thing I got to bring and strap up, and it's like.
Well, I found that I really liked using one. I never used to be a bino guy.
Yeah.
But especially early season when you got the thick canopy.
Yeah.
If you got a nice low light, wide exit pupil pair of binoculars, they help you so much in those last couple of minutes. Although late season, what I sometimes find myself doing instead of lugging the heavy pair around and hanging them on the tree or putting them in the pack or something, is I'll just use like a little minimalist pair, like a 7x28 or something, and I'll stick that in like a drop pocket on the exterior of my
something
jacket.
Easy to get to, just for like that. Yeah, because you can see it far away as late season.
Yeah, you get the snow on the ground. It's always a lot lighter than it is. You can usually see pretty well even at the end of shooting light, so you don't really need the low light gathering capability quite that late in the season.
Yeah, that's actually a good thought. You're gonna still forget them in your bag.
Probably still sits in the car.
Yeah. That's great. So you actually shot a pretty nice buck this year. Was following you. Where would you shoot that again?
Wisconsin.
Okay, same place you've been hunting for a while, or how did that work?
Well, it's somewhat of a newer place. In the Twin Cities areas, you got a lot of public land really close, and a lot of that public land can be really good. and there's some really, really nice bucks that get shot on that public land, really close to the cities, but they're like a needle in a haystack.
Right.
You can spend a lot of time trying to find them. So what I try to do is venture out a little bit and start driving a little bit further and finding areas that weren't as easy for people to pick apart on aerial maps, because the general knowledge base of people learning how to e-scout has gotten to the point where you take some of those places that are close to the cities.
That's because of you, man. You keep telling people how to do it. It's all your fault.
That's the thing. Well, it's not just me. But now I'm having to figure out ways of like, kind of getting ahead of that and circumnavigating that issue. And it's harder to do out of state because that's all I got is the e-scouting. But like locally, if I can look at an area and say, this looks really intimidating from an e-scouting perspective, I bet not as many people, this is not like a very good destination looking location for an out-of-stater. This is something that might be harder for, people to figure out, even the locals. There's probably a few good ones, but the general guy might struggle in a place like this. That's kind of what I was looking for. And it kind of led me to more bigger woods types of areas.
Yeah.
And even now there's a bunch of really good content on big woods coming out. Dan Infall just started releasing his Big Woods DVD to YouTube. Deer Hunter Podcast, I know, has put out some good content.
He's Michigan. He's Michigan, right?
Yep. Jason Sam Kobiak, Bo Martonic.
I was gonna say Bo does a lot of big woods. That we had him on the podcast a few weeks ago. So.
Johnny Stewart. So yeah, there's a lot of guys that are starting to make that content, and it's really good stuff. But what I find with that kind of terrain is that even if you've heard the knowledge, it still takes getting out there and trying it out to really let that sink in. And some of these places, I had scouted them for probably 2 years before ever actually bringing in a set and trying to hunt it. So I would, like this place that I killed this buck, I had spring scouted it twice, in like 2 consecutive years, and found some good sheds and found some good locations, but I'd never hunted it. And this was kind of the first year that I really decided, okay, I'm just going to, take the plunge. It's a long drive, but, I'm just going to suck it up and do it. And started putting some cameras out in season just to kind of gather inventory. In addition to just kind of looking for tracks and whatnot and other sign. And early season was a little bit of a struggle. I shot a doe and was seeing some big sign, but was just not able to get on, bigger deer in like that September, even like early October. But mid-October, man, the place just lit up. Like that.
Why? Really? Mid-October?
Yeah. Like the 17th.
So the lull. I say that with air quotes.
Yeah. Well, I think because I put out a couple of cameras in like, I think it was the 15th or the 16th, somewhere right in there. And when I was putting those cameras out, I mean, there was fresh scrapes everywhere. There was, chest high rubs that were opened up in some of these areas. And I put these cameras out, and looking back at the photos, like that night, I got the pictures and video of the deer that I ended up shooting.
Yeah.
Like working that area. And so what it made me think is that perhaps that's just like the way it always works there. Perhaps there's a doe in that specific area that goes into heat early. I don't know what the exact, reasoning was, but that's intel that I can use next year for sure. But I kept hunting kind of late October. We had that big cold snap late October, a bunch of snow. Was getting some opportunities, but it was still pretty slow, and I was struggling to see deer. Yeah. And then November came around. We just kept hunting hard, and we started to see more and more deer, and eventually got the opportunity to shoot that deer. So it was a bit of luck. What I kept trying to do was I kept thinking I need to figure out where this deer is bedding. Yeah. Because I could see where his sign was, and I had some places where I assumed that he was bedding. But I also, when I was checking the cameras, was not getting pictures of him consistently enough to think I was close to his bed. I was just somewhere in his core area.
Yeah, right. He was frequenting there occasionally.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And there was even some days where I would look and I would see pictures of him at like 4 a.m. and he hit like 3 cameras in a row.
Yeah.
And then like an hour later, he'd be coming back the same direction. Like he was just going down the line, checking for does, and then coming right back. Every picture I got of him was like at night. And so I figured if I can just find out where this deer's bedding, like we were legitimately trying to go through areas to try and kick deer out of their beds, just to find out where they were bedding. And I never ended up kicking that deer out of his bed, but I think where we ended up killing him was probably pretty close. Yeah. Because when we got into that area, it was the first time we had walked that particular little chunk, and there was big sign all over the place. So,
are you So, okay, are you going to go back to this spot now? Like now that you've kind of figured out this hot spot time is like mid-October and maybe in November, like, is this something you'd go back to like year after year? Or is it just this one buck that you've kind of figured out?
No, I'll go back there, and there's a couple other places too that I've scouted that are very similar looking.
Sure.
Because what I found is that all the spring scouting that I had done in that place prior to actually hunting it, I had a certain set of expectations in mind. But actually hunting it during the fall and using some of the in-season stuff that we're picking up on changed kind of my thought process on how the deer were using that habitat and using that terrain. I was seeing things that were different than what I would have assumed the deer were doing. And then once I was able to take that intel and look back at the aerial maps again, I was able to say, okay, this kind of makes sense now. And I was able to start applying that look to other places that had similar, swamps or similar structures of how the hills kind of rolled, similar structure of clear-cut areas to mature hardwoods, and expanded that scouting range so that I can hopefully cast a little bit wider net. So in the case that next year there's, not as many mature deer in that particular location, or in the case that, word gets out and that place just gets pounded next year, I'll have other places to go hit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, so when you were the thing that I think is interesting about that is that you found the spot that there's a mid-October spot that you found like heat up. Because like most people will say, you get to a certain part in October and things just die down. What really happens is, probably deer are changing their patterns due to food or pressure, right? And so you've clearly found a spot that is hot because either hunter pressure pushed them out there or something. Like what's the reason why you found a spot that actually increases in quality at a time where most people see a decrease in deer?
I think part of it might be that time of year there's less hunting pressure than there is in November. But I also think that part of it has to do with just kind of the hormones that are active that time of year.
Yeah.
And if there is a doe, because some does come in on the early end of the bell curve, some come in the late end of the bell curve, and everywhere in between. So if there is a doe that annually comes into heat at the same time every year, as long as that doe is alive and in that area, and if she's passing that genes to her fawns, perhaps that's a pocket of deer where you're just starting to see a little bit shift earlier into where you start seeing that activity heat up. And, looking at that camera in some of those particular spots, it was pretty clear that when we put the cameras out on like that mid-October date, it was like hot right away.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what time was it the 12th?
Sure. Right. Exactly.
The 14th. I don't exactly know. And that's something I'll have to learn next year, but it kind of opened up the window, and we got daylight pictures from that time all the way through like the entire first week of November, but it was very sporadic. And there was something that was a little bit odd in that a lot of my preconceived notions were that I'd be able to find a spot where I could find specific deer hitting, like, say, specific scrapes over and over and over again and getting more patternable. And maybe they're doing it at night, and all of a sudden they start daylighting in that pattern. But what I found was somewhat more of the opposite, in that a lot of these areas, I would get the same deer on cameras multiple times. So it might be 3 days apart. It might be 4 days apart. It might be heading west one day in the afternoon, heading east the next time he's on camera in the afternoon. And so it was very difficult to pattern specific deer.
Yeah.
Which could just mean that I was not as close as I needed to be to wherever they were.
Right. You could be on the periphery or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that I was just kind of putting my cameras in areas where, multiple core areas were overlapping. And that's why I was seeing all that daylight activity.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something I'll have to play around with a little bit next year. It almost seemed like if you wanted to kill a deer and you weren't after a specific one, then all you'd have to do is find kind of a bulletproof access to some of these areas and just hunt it.
And just wait.
Every time you got that safe wind, and eventually you're going to get an opportunity to shoot one of those deer. Yeah. And if you got a couple nice deer on camera, then you put your time in. It seemed like you're eventually going to get an opportunity at shooting one of those nice deer. Yeah. And if you're after a specific one, then that was a little bit, more challenging.
You have to dial it in a little bit.
Right. Exactly.
That's how I shot that big buck on public land. It was one that I had seen, like, I couldn't figure out exactly where his range was, but it was a spot where I would see just regular buck activity, like small bucks, big bucks, and they were just, but he would be there, and he was the biggest one. And so I just hunted it over a couple years, just pretty hard, and when the wind was right and everything else. And at just one morning, you know, he chased 2 does out and stopped within 12 yards. But it is exactly like you said. It was more of a, I know enough that if I sit here long enough, and you know, this is generally like, I rely on this a lot because sometimes I feel like I don't know enough to make the right decision. But if I just, you know, if I use the right wind, you know, keep my scent down and just hunt there, I'm persistent in the way that I hunt, you know, picking the right spots, right? Like eventually something's going to happen. It's a numbers game at some point.
Yeah. And one thing that's kind of interesting is that when we scouted it this year, you know, we took what we learned and we expanded on it, like I mentioned, and we basically, through a process of elimination, found a bunch of areas that were just dead, that looked like they could have maybe been good, but there just wasn't the sign there. And then we found areas that had deer sign, but not big buck sign. And then we found our areas that had big buck sign. And when we kind of looked at it big, like high level again, looked at the grand scale, it was almost like there was a swath, like not that wide, but just like, I don't know, maybe 1.75 miles long, where all the just like a swipe. Yeah. Where all of the big buck sign was in that one, like,
interesting,
that one chunk. Yeah. It was interesting. And what I figured next year is that, because a lot of that stuff we hadn't hunted and we hadn't scouted until that point. So now going into next year, if we can be more efficient with how we're kind of spot checking, more efficient with, you know, we put a camera here, and here, and then we can use that for inventory purposes. And if we're getting more close to daylight pictures, well, maybe that's a key that deer is bedding, you know, closer to this end of that range.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we learned quite a bit this year, and I'm kind of excited to see how this next one turns out too.
I love that. It takes some years to. We've got a couple spots like that. It's taken some years and mistakes, and like a lot of time bumping into the deer at places you don't expect them. But how many cameras are you running?
Last year I had, I think it was 5 or 6.
Okay, so that's not crazy.
I own more than that, but putting them out there is like. It's more work than actually just like putting the boots on the ground and scouting. It seems like, it's like if I take even those like 5 cameras, it's like, okay, if I want to check every card, I got to leave it in the morning and I'll get back at night, because they're spread out over like such an area.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are, you know, an hour and a half will walk from the truck. So it's not convenient to check them from that aspect. I might start using more cell cams in areas that I have that cell service, just to save the amount of walking. Because, I mean, every time I'm going out there, I'm basically taking every opportunity that I can to walk and spot check areas on foot and look for fresh tracks and logging roads and things like that. So it's not like I'm necessarily always, you know, would be using them as a crutch, more as just like a supplement to what I'm able to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It can only be at one place at one time. Yeah. So, yeah, I may do some more of that, and I may just, because that the areas can be so vast, I might find that, you know, maybe this place 10 miles down the road is really hot this year.
Right.
And then I can focus more over there.
Yeah, it's like it in some sense it burns a lot of time setting them up. In the other sense, like over the years, it saves you a lot of time, because you can start creating like a database of, you know, what you've seen and where you've seen at what time and everything else. And so we've talked a lot about, we've had different guests say different things. Some swear that like cell cameras are the devil. You know, some rely heavily on cell cameras. And so this year we've tried them in the past. It just never, wherever we hunt, I feel like there's just terrible service.
Yeah, I got one right there.
Yeah, you do. What is that? I think it's terrible. Yeah. It never has worked. What is it?
It's just 5-point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Micro. Yeah, I've actually had it on for the past week. I don't even know if it's still on, just to see if it takes pictures of me like walking down here.
Does it send you? It doesn't send you pictures.
Doesn't send me anything, and I've actually sent them one saying this is defective and this is a brand new one. And still doesn't work.
Maybe. Are you sure you're not doing it wrong?
I'd like to think I'm pretty technologically savvy.
Yeah.
Being that I've got a degree in technology.
Yeah.
But no, it just doesn't seem to work. I'm sure there are models and devices out there that have worked for people. Mine, and I'm just. Are you
turned off on cell cameras altogether?
Just that brand, maybe.
You heard it here first.
You know, some people are like, I'm all Moultrie, or I'm all Cuddyback, or I'm all Wild Game Innovations, or
nothing. Yeah. What do you use?
I have a mix. I have a few Exodus. I have a couple of Spy Points, and I had a couple of the new Tactic Cams.
Oh yeah.
And I had some of like the old Tasco ones, like the $28 ones, and probably something. I think I had a Browning and a Primo's, neither of which really work anymore. So it's kind of the former of those ones that I listed out that was kind of my mix.
I had a couple Moultries for a while. They seem to work. They're big old bricks, but I was looking at those what are they, Tascos, do those things work? $5 or whatever on Amazon?
For 25 or $30 or whatever they cost. They're not the best quality, but they're reliable enough that you're not kicking yourself for cheaping out.
Yeah. Like you're getting a picture of it. It's not the clearest picture. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're gonna have like a few to put out of state or something where it's like, okay, these might get stolen. Or you're putting them in an area where you're a little bit concerned about that.
Yeah. Like most areas that we hunt.
Yeah.
Chalk it to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not the best if you, I guess, want all the features that a camera could give you.
Yeah.
Video quality, the photo quality is decent, but if I was gonna, invest a lot of money into them, I wouldn't get like 10 of those. I would get, maybe 5 or 7 that are a little bit higher quality.
It makes sense.
I was looking at them because where I'm moving this summer, and where I'm moving, I've got some spots that I've hunted in the past. We've seen a lot of guys where the spots, the same like you said, is like this, like on the map is awesome. You get out there and everybody and his brother have been out there, like, trail camera or like dead deer. You're right. That's what we shot. And it was like, dang it, we got up at like the crack of ass, and got out there, hoofed it the long way through the briars and we got there. And I mean, I saw a doe. That was it.
Yeah.
So that morning I'm like, oh, it's going to happen. This is a sweet spot. And like you said, people just, I don't know. We've talked about just setting up near the, like Dan, I feel like it's Dan Infeld that says just set up near the parking, like where people park. No one hunts there.
He's not wrong.
No.
And he's been saying that for a long time. That's probably the first person that I heard basically give that advice. And, lo and behold, one of the places that we scouted this spring, it was right next to the parking lot. And we're like, oh, what the heck? We'll check it out. And it was littered with good deer sign.
Yeah.
And you step out of it and it's like, man, you walk up to the road and it's like, it's that close. Like you could literally almost see a deer sitting in there if you were driving past, if you know where exactly to look.
Yeah. Like
just that close to the road. And yeah, everybody that parks there, it's a pretty busy parking lot. Everybody just walks right past.
How many yards are you from the road?
In this particular spot, I'm talking, some of those beds are like 50 yards from the road.
You love to see it.
Hey, everybody walks past it. We had that encounter this past fall. We were out state land up north, where we're pretty well familiar with the land around in that area. And we finally
we're just checking stuff out. Slow hunting. Just walk down probably 50, 75 yards from our truck, and sure enough, kicked up a big old 8-point. Yeah, big.
It was big. Dude.
He was tucked up under a deadfall, just like hidden under the tree, like laying underneath it. And it was beautiful because he could see up the hill right to the parking lot, like right to where people park. So clearly he just either would hunker down and like you could not see him in there, or he would take off and like you saw. I mean, he took off and down an island and through a swamp and like never to be seen again.
So good times.
Yeah, those spots are nice. I mean, you can hunt them pretty much however you want to hunt them, but they always seem nice from like a morning hunt perspective.
Yeah,
they're going to be crawling back into those areas, and you don't have to get there, 2 hours before light to crawl in the dark and get set up in some nasty area. You just take a nice leisurely walk from the truck and get set up.
Yeah, you take your time.
And you don't even need a bunch of DIY gear. You can
you can lug it all out there. Just take a sled. No, that's pretty funny. So you are going into this year. I'm assuming turkey hunting. What's your plans for this year? What hunts do you got lined up?
Yeah, we still got a few more turkey hunts left. The first one, actually, like all my turkey hunting this year has been in May. So I didn't go any out of state. I didn't get an early Minnesota tag. My wife just shot one on Saturday.
Nice.
And now it's basically from now until the end of May, turkey hunting every chance we get.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into this fall, I'll be hunting Nebraska for their opener.
Nice.
And then depending on how things shake out with timing and tags and whatnot, we might go straight up to North Dakota. If not, I'd still like to go back to North Dakota for the rut, or maybe even late season. Wisconsin and Minnesota for sure. and I'm considering doing another Iowa gun tag again.
Okay.
Which is like a December, could be January if I do a late muzzleloader hunt.
Yep.
And might be doing Pennsylvania for like a 4-day hunt as well.
PA. What
action.
do you know people out there or whatever?
Through Spartan Forge.
Okay.
They're putting something together. So if that all works out, then I'd be going out there for a nice little 4-day hunt, which should be pretty fun.
That's a busy year. You got a lot of things on the horizon.
Yeah, it forces you to be efficient with your time. And I always wonder, like, because last year I definitely weighted my hunting much more towards Wisconsin, even though I had a lot of tags. It kind of felt like Wisconsin was the main grind. And then everything else was like, man, I just have not been putting enough time into these other things to really make them successful. So, yeah, unless I somehow, manage to work fewer hours, it's kind of the balance I'm going to have to strike.
Yeah.
You put all your eggs in one basket and just hunt one state and hunt it hard and hunt it right, or do you split time and try to make the best of your 3-4 day trips?
That's where we're at. What are you gonna do this year? Did you make up your mind yet? Are you hunting Michigan hard? You going out of state?
I always hunt Michigan hard, man. Road hard and put away wet. I think that's the.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's like a boat I had once. Or is it girlfriend? Yeah. Anyways,
I don't know.
You're going. Are you going out of state? If you picked a place you want to go?
Probably not.
You just don't want to? You don't not like hunting?
I love to hunt. I just have some prior engagements that I'm engaged in.
What's that?
Don't worry about it. I'll tell you later.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, we're coming up on time, Garrett. For people who want to see, all your DIY, your hunts, all the things that you've been up to, how can they find you?
Easiest place would be YouTube. That's where most of my content is. So if you type in DIY Sportsman on YouTube, that's where you find most of my stuff. Otherwise, Instagram, DIY_Sportsman, or on Facebook too. Although Facebook is mostly just reposting what I post on Instagram.
Yeah, I think that's how ours works too. I never go to ours, so I wouldn't know.
And I have a podcast also, and that one you can search DIY Sportsman, or it's through the Sportsman's Nation podcast network. So either one of those will pull it up.
Wonderful. Very cool. Hey, thank you so much for just taking a minute just to chat a little bit, get to know you a little bit better, and we'll follow along this fall as you're all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.